So we are officially called to order at 7:05. Tonight we actually don't have Lori is out tonight, so we actually don't have our clerk. But if I'm not speaking out of turn, I believe Felicia has graciously stepped up to will graciously step up to be the pro term
Pro tem?
clerk, which just means just for one night only. Yeah, which means just for one night only that she will be just clerking. That does not mean that Felicia has a vote. Felicia is not a part of the board, so we are within our rights to, uh, to have her do this and for her to graciously step up. And so I say thank you. So, with that being said, Felicia, I will have you call the roll, please.
Eden,
Here.
Jonathan,
Here.
Hilda. You just got on mute.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer,
Here.
Emmanuel.
I am here. So thank you for doing that. So
I'm noting Lori is absent and Adam is absent.
Yeah.
Okay.
But usually you don't have to. Usually it should be noted, but you can. I think you can. I've seen it done both ways. The people who are here say present, and then I've also seen that the people who aren't here they have also marked. They have been marked as absent too. So either will work. But we have a sufficient amount of the membership here to conduct quorum. Sufficient amount of membership so that we have quorum, so we are able to conduct business tonight. So we will go into the second item, which is public comment, which any members of the general public who wish to speak, please do so. Seeing that I don't see anybody from the general public, we can actually move on to item number 3, which is the approval of the November meeting minutes. I know that I saw Lori sent them out earlier this afternoon. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read them, but at this point, if there's anybody that has any recommendations or comments about the November meeting minutes, please do so now. I'll give you a few moments to read them over or look them over, and then after that, I will open the floor and entertain any motions.
I would motion to approve when and if people have seen everything.
All right. On Jonathan's motion to approve the November meeting minutes, is there a second?
I approve.
It's seconded by Hilda. All right. Any further discussion?
Just, I wasn't there for the meeting, so is it reasonable to abstain? Because I wasn't present in the November meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, I will do that. Okay. All right. On Jonathan's motion to approve, seconded by Hilda, all those in favor say aye. Excuse me. Yeah, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those any nays? Any abstentions?
Abstain. Thank you.
We have one abstention. All right. The ayes have it. That motion carries. All right. We will now go on to the next item, which is the ED report, which I will turn this over to Tina. So, Tina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually wrote a report this month. Thankfully, I can open up the floor for questions on that. I did want to make a note that I actually pulled the update on the strategic plan, this year's strategic plan, out of my report this month because I provided the board with a full year overview as a separate report, which we can talk about. It's not on the agenda, but I thought we could talk about it here in the agenda. So I'm hoping everyone got an opportunity to read through the initial ED report, and I'll pause here for any questions that you might have regarding that report.
Hey, Tina, can you just go into a little more detail about the capital improvements? I know you've signed on agreements with Teleview and all that, and to get the playback system.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this 5-year contract, it sounds like, or something with with a contractor? Can you just, I
Yeah,
guess
so
it sounds like you're working with them to develop a plan to get all this done.
yeah, so as the board knows, through the tech audit, a number of issues, equipment and facility issues were identified that have to be addressed, sooner rather than later. Most of it is a majority of our operating equipment, and the biggest one was our playback system that was identified as failing and extremely outdated. So that was the priority for me, was to start working on making sure that our channels are going to stay up. So we identified that Teleview was going to be our playback system. I worked with the city of Malden to to appropriate some of the free cash, that the capital funds, cable funds that we've put into the free cash to help pay for this expenditure. It is always the largest expenditure for a community media center, but it is the literal heart of our operations. We would not be able to comply with our requirements if we did not have this type of equipment. So the latest update on that is that we are moving forward with the purchase of the playback system. I have signed the contracts with the vendor. The equipment has been shipped to us and actually will be arriving here on Monday. I'm working with our IT consultant and our engineer from Medisant, who did our tech audit. They are going to prep the space for the install of the playback system. The vendor will actually do the implementation of the playback system. Well, but with the holidays, we're now looking at like mid-January before all of that is sort of finalized. Even though everything's going to get here next week, there's no way it's going to get installed before the holidays. So there's that. But we also know that our control room and our studio cameras are failing. Our lights in the studio are failing. All of our computers are so old that we can't update them to the latest software, and that includes our PCs and our Macs. So what I'm working on now is with different vendors to identify cost points for all of those expenditures, and working on planning, making a 5-year plan to implement all of those upgrades that we need, all those replacements that we need. In addition to that, I'm actually drafting a 20-year capital improvements plan that will identify these major expenditures that organizations like us have to do, and so that we can plan for those, right? So that we're not sitting here going, okay, I now need, realistically, if we had to do everything that was done now, I'd need like $300,000 to just fix what's broken. But I come from a single mom household, so I understand how to prioritize and budget things, right? So that's what I'm working on right now. I don't know if that helped clarify or answer your question, but
Yeah,
happy
definitely.
to, yeah.
Yep.
I think to put this into perspective too, and uh, what Tina's approach is probably, rather than being this scrappy, like let's band-aid this or replace that or piece this together. Part of what the tech audit helped Tina figure out and helped us figure out is that obviously we want equipment that's sustainable, but this stuff should have probably been phased in over time. It just wasn't. And that's okay. And maybe some of that isn't okay. But Tina's approach is okay. So going forward, how do we make ourselves accessible? The playback system will help with that. How do we make ourselves available so that we're showing that we have the latest technology, or that we can be workforce ready, or that what we're going to be installing now is going to be good or replaceable 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, or that kind of thing. So built into this plan and these recommendations will be thought process around how do we sustain it? How do we grow it? How do we get money for it? So it's in playback system. I was like, I know that sounds important, but it's literally the thing that takes our content and puts it out on the channels, which is super important, but it does a ton of other things. It integrates with the studio, it integrates with other things. And this new system is going to have us have the option for closed captions, which is not just people with low visibility or hearing issues, but it's also the ability to translate. So it's going to offer a lot more, not just nice to haves, but necessaries.
And it actually eliminates, this new system actually eliminates, I was working on the numbers, as I mentioned, and it eliminates, I think, almost close to $15,000 to $17,000 in capital expenditures on an annual basis for all the different software and hardware programs that we currently are subscribed to. That expenditure goes away. So, which is sort of nice, right? So I also look at that. I'm like, okay, I don't need a million different software programs to run this one thing, right? So what's the biggest bang for my buck, and where am I going to be spending money in 3 years? I also want to mention that our capital funds are not, unlimited, right? So we do get an annual amount from the cable companies. For Comcast, we get $70,000 a year. And when you're doing projects like this, that goes away very fast. Verizon is in a contract negotiation, so they are not giving us any more capital funding. They got one more payment coming in the spring, which has already been, the city has already allocated that to our capital funds. So with these big picture capital expenditures, we need to really plan for them and make sure that we are planning for the future, so we're not sitting in this situation. Which we talked a little bit about. Well, in my report, I talked a little bit about the excuse me, the grants that Felicia just submitted for, and they're massive. But they are specific to different things. I apologize, that we want to do in the future for the Workforce Ready program. They're not specific to these equipment upgrades or replacements that we have to do. So we as a group need to have a conversation about, all right, UMA needs new studio cameras and they're going to cost anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000, but we're buying cameras that will sustain us for the next 10, 15 years and are industry standard for our workforce development program. How are we going to engage our community in helping us raise those funds to get these needed things, right? So that's what this plan is about getting some numbers in front of us as a group and going, okay, what are next steps? Oh. I don't know, Felicia, do you want to talk really briefly about the MCC grant?
Yeah, so there is two that were available that we applied for. Sometimes grants are easy and sometimes grants are more complicated. The more money, usually the more complicated, the more hoops. So I would say these two together took me about 40 hours to write. And we have a comprehensive design proposal from UX architectural firm, which took our feasibility study and our feedback and basically scoped out what it would cost to create design ready shovels to the ground for very specific items in the facility. Would address things like structure, building, plumbing, code, and make us, so like we need a good house to have a nice kitchen kind of thing, which is just an analogy of like, if we're going to put this great equipment in the facility, we need an overall structure that is environmentally sound, as well as fits the equipment and the structure have to fit. We have to address things like flow. We have to address air quality. We want, LED lighting, things like that. So there was a lot of hoops that we had to jump through to explain in the grant how we would use these funds, what purpose, why would it be a meaningful impact to the community. One is approximately $250,000. The other one was for $15,000 that was specific to I'm losing my word. Was it
Systems.
systems? Thank you. Feasibility was in my head. Yeah, systems replacement grant. So we applied. We got a very nice letter of support from our complete state representative legislative delegation. So that was all of our reps signed it, which was lovely. Senator Lewis is very much behind us. We will be applying for earmarks if there are any in the spring. Tina had a really great conversation with him during his legislative session, open office hours, which was helpful. And we got a very nice letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce in Malden. So, do you have any questions about the grants or?
No, but I also think, and I keep going back to the sponsorship and fundraising. I'm sure there's a way now that we have something specific to fundraise for. It feels like, here's an opportunity for a lot of businesses, local businesses, to pitch in and to help us out, and that'll supplement, any of this grant stuff, hopefully. So, yeah.
And go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say my intention is for us to talk as a team at the work session next month about next steps. But Felicia has done a good job of kind of outlining, if you want to talk about that a little bit for capital.
So in the grant, I had to write in so if you got this money, how would you fundraise for the other part of it? So, taking some feedback and some plans that we've already sort of established, giving an outline, how the board would be involved. This would be a capital campaign. A capital campaign is different than a general donation campaign. There would be the opportunity potentially for sponsors or underwriters to come in and name a room or name a piece of equipment or have a wish list of items that we need. We would do marketing communications around. This would not be a year thing, and this is not going to happen in January, but we would have to have probably a committee that would help us do this and set this up. We would have a very link to our strategic plan. So yeah, all of that was, placed in the grant language.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to share it with you if you're interested in reading it. It's pretty dry, but in some parts.
I found it fascinating. I love it.
Well, I also think that it almost it holds your feet to the fire. You're already ahead of the game, and when you go to ask people to kind of contribute, you've got this already. So I think it's good to already have the ball rolling, so to speak, in some respect.
Yeah.
So applying for these grants, I mean, as Felicia mentioned, one of them is $250,000 matching grant, right? So this puts UMA in the sort of the big boy seat, right? Like this is real money that we're talking about. This is the money I've been talking about since the day I came here. This is the time, this is where our efforts go. So when she says I spent 40 hours on this one grant, I'm like, okay, because this is the kind of money I want to funding we need to chase. But I also want to say that it's a matching grant. So we have to come up with however much they award us if we are awarded. And I think we have 1 year to identify that funding. It might even be 2, I'm not sure.
I might be talking out of turn, but I believe we have 1 to 3 years, but yes.
Yeah. So and regardless, we should be doing this type of campaign anyways, because we know we want to move forward with this. It would just be nice to have support from an organization like the MCC. The other thing I want to say is that as I, for the first time ever, had to put together a resume of what I've done here at UMA since I got here, and I'll be honest, I was like, yay me. There's a lot of stuff that has happened, and we built that foundation and that trust with this organization. So I really believe our outlook is good for potential anyways. So
I kind of want to stay on this, and I just want to ask and follow up. So with the grants, right, with the capital funds and grants that we're having, right, and I also noticed in your ED report too that the city council is supposed to be giving us money. If I read that and understood that correctly.
So that was the free cash. As of Tuesday, When the finance committee met, I was advised that it came favorably out of the finance committee. It had been voted into finance for recommendation. Finance approved and recommended approval. So it is supposed to be on one of the first agendas of the city council in January for a
Okay.
vote of approval.
Do you know if that's going to be the full? Like, did they talk about it's the full 50,000?
No. Oh yes, it's a full 50,000.
But it's not going to be like an installments, right? Like they're not going to give us 25 now.
No, I verified today that it would if the language won't change. So yes.
Okay.
What is that 50K from? Is it,
So
how does that happen?
that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, Jonathan, because sometimes it can get confusing. So as I mentioned, every year we get a certain amount of money from the cable companies for capital improvements. If we don't spend that money within the year, it rolls into the city's free cash fund. Right? So let's say, we got 125,000 in 2022, but we only use 50,000 of it. That goes into basically the general fund of the city at the end of the year. Okay, so that's step one. So I did figure it out. I think UMA's, I did some math from 2022 to today, and I think UMA's contributed over $300,000 to the general fund of the city of capital funds, right? Because they haven't been using their funds. So unfortunately, that's not going to be the case anymore for the city because we are now going to have a plan where we're saying, okay, every dollar of our capital fund is going towards this project, and this project. Therefore, it needs to be earmarked and not rolled into the general fund. But backing up a little bit, because UMA has committed so much of the cable capital funding to the general fund, and this is I don't know for sure, but I think this is the first time UMA's ever asked for an appropriation out of it. What I heard from Council President Linehan on Tuesday was that there was no conversation. It was like, yeah, UMA needs this. It's a vital part of the organization. We're definitely gonna help them out and do this because we've contributed. So, but that's how it works. And we'd love to be able to support the city any way we can, but at the same time, we got to take care of our stuff, right? So that's why it's important to have a 5-year capital improvements plan to show, well, no, we need to hold on to this money to pay for this and this and this. So, yeah.
So I'm going to change the subject and hopefully that's okay. But part of the ED report, there was staffing to launch an UMA intern apprenticeship. Is there anything that can be discussed, or is that just going to happen on December 22nd, as it says here? I don't know what you can talk about or can't, but
Yeah, so the UMA staff is going to be meeting on Monday of next week to really deep dive into our launch of the internship program, that 9-month program. And we're going to talk, I was actually working on the implementation workbook before the meeting, which I was supposed to get to the team earlier this week and I didn't get to, but it's happening. We're going to do a deep dive on who's responsible for what needs to be implemented before we bring these interns on, how are they processed, who's doing so we're doing like a 2-hour work session on Monday to kind of go over every detail we can and assign tasks and such so that we can get this program launched and going. So that's what that is about. And we'll be able to talk about that in, what we come up with at next month's work session with the board. So yeah.
And is it envisioned a paid position or is it volunteer? Is that clear, or
Oh, that's right. You weren't at the meeting last month. Sorry, we talked about this last month. That's
Okay.
why. Okay. No, it's no problem. I'll give a quick overview. The internship program that we're hoping to launch is a 9-month program. The first 3 months are unpaid, and then they have to apply for the second phase of it, which is a 6-month program and a paid program, and we are working with a couple different organizations to see if we can get assistance with those stipends rather than coming out of our operating budget. So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
The work it's really a workforce development program too, so it links in that it doesn't have to just be college students. These could be does have a minimum age requirement, but it will be at least the initial plan was passed through some folks who came in to meet with us from Mass Hire, and they were just over the moon excited. They saw some real potentials, and they really have been helpful in our process. We're not, we don't have an official partnership, but we have them as a resource as well. And the work session on Monday is really going to be the staff figuring out, okay, so to assume an internship program or volunteers or whoever, what does that look like for us? Who takes what? What are they actually doing? How do we keep measurements and metrics of what they're doing? Part of what will potentially be helpful, and I don't know if you want me to talk about this at all, Tina, is the CRM system.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of my ED report, so yeah.
So we did sign a contract. We had a demo with a company called Charity Proud, and they have a very unique software for nonprofits that does have volunteer management module to it. It's for memberships, for donors, for any prospects, for contacts. Very good pricing. It would actually eliminate some, again, duplicate applications that we use now. It would allow us to maintain our Stripe account. In the end, it was a little bit of a wash because there's an installation fee, but it's really going to help us manage data. It's going to help us grow our donor program. It's going to also be something that we can use to track volunteer hours, which would mean we could also track internship hours, create different levels of membership, create different contacts in there. So like, legislative information could be in there too. Representative, however we track who comes through our doors. So it's going to offer us a lot of flexibility. We can do newsletters through it. We could do customized outreach and information to whoever's on our contact lists now. So I'm very excited about it. I met this vendor at the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, and there's a little discount that we get because of that. So we get first 3 months for free. Hi, Hilda.
Hi. So I guess the only thing that stood out to me, going through the funds and the assumptions and the staffing is the expenses and the risk of the grants and not knowing exactly when they're gonna hit. So my thing is, is there a timeline or an expectation? Do you see this kind of lining up with the plan that you guys already have in place? So it's not like snowballing later, because I am worried about, I guess, them not coming in on time, and we already have, more people on that we're trying to get, I guess I just wouldn't want them to kind of get discouraged with everything else that needs to get replaced right now with the upgrades, So I guess just dialing it in a little bit because you guys are managing it very well with the things that you guys have going on right now. But I guess it's just maintaining and making sure that these funds are, coming in on time so we're not waiting on anything.
Are you just for clarification, are you talking about the capital or the interns or which one, which are you talking about grants?
The funding, sorry. So the funding right now, how you guys haven't hit it yet. So
Are you talking about my fiscal year 25-26 fund update?
mhm.
Which I provide that every year, or every report as to where we're at. So I'm just looking for clarification on where you're worried where grants are coming in.
Yeah, so right now you guys have just submitted out these grants, right? Like, is there a timeline for when they're
Yeah.
supposed to actually come in and hit? Is it kind of aligning with the plan that you have set in place now?
So our current plan does not, if we don't get these grants, then we're gonna have to switch tactics and make a different plan for these projects.
Mm-hmm.
The submission that we're talking about, we haven't even it's the planning phase, right? So like if we can't start planning for another 2 or 3 years for this restructure, that's fine. It's not that is not part of my fund update, is what I'm trying to say.
So I guess it's when would we know to circle back? I guess like how far along do we have to go to figure out when we need to circle back and actually look through these things again to see if we do need to have a change, because it was my first time kind of looking through this stuff, so I'm trying to get a better understanding, but I guess with waiting on, donations, memberships, the money that you guys are expecting to come in is kind of just making sure that everything's flowing.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So Felicia, do you want to talk about, do you know when the decision will be made?
Yeah, so decisions for those two larger grants will be made in the spring. Around workforce development. So right now we're still planning. So the staff is going to go through and hopefully flush out this plan. And then when the board and the staff come together in a work session in January, you will all talk as a group. Like, what does it look like? What are the moving parts? And great minds think alike. Mine is always, and Tina's obviously, how will we pay for this? How will this be sustainable? So I'm doing grant research now around workforce development, but there is state funding, there's federal funding, there's company funding, private donation funding, college funding. There's all different types of opportunities out there, but we have to have the plan fleshed out as best we can. The plan is not fleshed out yet, but the first step is Tina's got this plan. We're going to work through it as a group for staff. Then we bring it to the board and us look at it together. And then I can say, look, this is the plan. This is how we're going to identify how we'll pay for it. How will we sustain it? So, great minds think alike. Yes. How will we pay for it? We need to make sure the money's in place. We need to know that we've been approved for things. We need to know that we want to pay our interns and keep our interns. And this is a qualified workforce ready program. A qualified workforce ready program has to hit certain markers within the state. So we want to make sure that we've done all of our due diligence before we start bringing interns in to say, oh, we've got this great program, workforce ready, but it's more than that. We're still making sure that we're hitting all those markers.
Gotcha.
And I want to clarify that, so for like, I did a preliminary budget for the next, I think it was 2 years, with a progression on not only our internship program, but the apprenticeship program and what that looks like literally for funding for like, how do we pay these kids, right? And I made sure within the UMA budget that we had enough in there to be able to cover those stipends if we never got any support, right? So I've already got funding figured out for like 2 years. And then I said to Felicia, now take all this information and go talk to Mass Hire, go talk to this person, this person. Again, we're only talking about the initial internship program. That is a revolving program into our pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship program, which is technically the workforce development, right? The internship program is really just a paid internship. There's no expectations that UMA has to continue on with these interns once they've gone through the program. And it's a flowing program. So the first 3 months, the first round of kids start, then after that, another round of kids start, or people. I shouldn't say kids because, whatever. But so that's already been budgeted into this year's budget and will be budgeted into next year's budget as well. But it's a very minimal cost too. I want to mention that. I think it was less than $10,000 for the full program to pay these interns a decent wage, an introductory wage, and then it ramps up throughout the program. But you're talking about a 3-year progression as well for that. And these are exactly what funders want to see. Like they want to see that it's actionable, that it's working, and that they're getting paid to do things. So I think it's going to be an easy funding model for us. The second thing I wanted to mention, just to be clear, because we do have some new board members that might not understand how cable funding works with us. One of the reasons the numbers in my report are so low is that we're a quarter behind in receiving funds from the cable company. So while, I mean, I actually have numbers in there for the operating grant because I just received June through September's funds, right? So I won't actually receive the operating funds from October to December until like mid-February or March. So the numbers in this report are a bit skewed because technically, if we go off of last quarter's funds, we should really, technically be sitting around $225,000 in operating funds for the cable companies. We just don't get them until March. So we are actually, with those numbers kind of on track. We should be roughly around 50% where we wanted to be. But we can always do better.
Why is that? Why are they lagged so much? Is that
So,
typical?
yeah, it's in the contract, it's in the franchise
Okay.
negotiations.
Okay.
They have 45 days from the date of the end
And
date of the quarter to provide those funds to the licensee, which is the city of Malden, and then they have to process the funds to come to us. So yeah, we usually get it about 50 to 60 days after the quarter close.
And other types of grants that we've applied for. So these two very large ones would be matching grants. So we have to have funds in the door before we can apply to get more money from, because they want to see. So if we have 17K in the bank, we can only draw 17K. If we have 200K, we can draw 200K. If we get 250, we can draw 250. Other type you apply for a grant, and then it's usually a 3 to 6 month later you find out whether you've been granted the funds, and sometimes those are reimbursable, sometimes they pay in installments. We just got our READ designation for the Universal Participation Program, which is another Massachusetts Cultural Council grant, which allows us to spend money on accessibility issues. That's another 3 years, but we get 5 each year. Sometimes they pay you outright, sometimes it's reimbursable, sometimes it's matching. So, but there's always a lag, and sometimes they cross our fiscal year, which runs July 1st to June 30th. So that's why sometimes when Tina's reporting on things, we're talking about the potential of something that we've applied for, but we haven't been necessarily awarded it, or we've been awarded something, but we won't see it till, later.
How are these things being tracked right now?
Depends on which things.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, because it sound like they spider web kind of into each other, you know? So I'm kind of going it in my mind right now, like how, is there a calendar? You know?
yeah,
Just try to make sense of it. But you guys are very good at what you do. I'll
thank
tell you
you.
that. I'll tell
Uh,
you that.
So organizationally, it can be challenging. So
Yeah.
when grants are due, they are on my personal calendar within our OneDrive, and then I also have folders for each of those grants with the folders name, the title of the grant, and then the year that it's been applied for, the year that it would be paid out. I have whether it's been submitted. I also keep an Excel spreadsheet of submitted, granted, things that we have been declined. Another reason I'm excited about this customer relationship management software, it has a grant tracking module.
Oh,
So
great. That's amazing. Oh,
So I
amazing.
can keep a grants calendar. Within that, I can see where I've applied, what my track record is, what funds have come in. It also will integrate with QuickBooks. So it it's fantastic. And Tina, when I got there, we also talked through QuickBooks. So we do have the ability to track through QuickBooks, what has come in and to what project and what our grant and how much we've spent out from that grant. So, but this new software will be a little bit more, it will allow me to give better updates and better tracking.
Okay, so it's modernizing at least for the most part
Yeah.
because, you know, it just sounds like a lot of paper and a lot of filing, so I'm glad that it's moving in the right direction in that sense because I can't.
And all my folders on the OneDrive are, so I create PDFs, I put all my documentation, all my supporting materials, a copy of the grant application. But yeah, it's a lot of,
Yeah.
full file system kind of thing.
Well, the other thing about the CRM and what I started implementing last year in our QuickBooks system is once we're told that we're awarded a grant or a contract, I'll use the MAPC project that we signed a contract for this last year, where they promised $34,000 to us if we did this project with them for over the full year. I can create a project within our QuickBooks system that says, okay, we've been promised $34,000. Here's how much we've received from that so far, and here's how much we're still going to receive. And or we got two smaller grants from the city of Malden. Their reimbursement system. So I still created the project, and then we put all of our expenses for that project in there and then invoiced the grantor, right? So like we're keeping track within our financial system what we're actually taking in, but it doesn't go into my report for the board until we've actually got the money in hand. So that's now if you would like me to change how I report, I'd be happy to do that, or maybe that's something that Eden and I can talk about during, for a financial update during the board meeting. I think it's going to be important moving forward that we have more clarifying reports and systems in place if we're going to be chasing these bigger grants and capital campaigns anyways. So I'm always about pre-planning and figuring out what's the best process. So
It might just be good just to keep track of the trend, just just to have it there on a document. It's been very helpful for me in a lot of things. So I think even if we just have a timestamp of it somewhere that it was there, it was logged, or you know, something of that nature, I think that would definitely be helpful.
sure.
I just have a question. I don't want to get bogged down on the fundraising stuff, but is there, and you guys have already mentioned this, like accessibility is a thing that was holding us back on some grants. Is there anything else holding us back on certain grants? Like Felicia, are you looking at grants and going, if we only had that, we could apply for this? Or I assume you're always thinking about that kind of stuff, but
I'm always thinking about like testimonials, data. Our CRM will help with that because, what age groups are we really suited to meet? Being able to track where community members have come through. So like nitty gritty is always helpful, but that is helpful with a story as well. So like, having the kids in for those workshops was really helpful because we got able to, use some photographs, and parents signed off on those things. And we have some, reactions from kids. But doing post workshop surveys, again, something we can do through this customer relationship management system. So any kind of data, stories, being all of that are things that are always needs. But the last grant was really like truly like how many square footage is the facility, describe it in detail, it's a brick outside with a blah blah blah. I'm like, thank God Tina had that information because we had a feasibility study. So things like that are always, people sometimes ask very detailed questions in grants. And so the more detail I can have is great. And then the more impact I can explain. So having things that trend over time, where we've been beta testing a lot of different things, people always want to see results. So like, how long have you been running this program? We don't have that kind of data right now, but we hope to develop that type of data, and being able to have things that we can replicate. Those are things that grantors always want to see. And how does the staff attribute their time? What kind of things do they work on? All those, that customer relationship management tool will be helpful.
Yeah, and I know you'll do this in the future if if you come across stuff and there's something needed, please present it to us so that we all have
Thank you.
eyes and ears on it and can possibly contribute in some way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will.
Okay. I did want to point out where is that? Towards the end of my report, I put in a legislative update. It is vitally important, if you have time in your schedule tomorrow, to either give all 4 of these delegates a phone call or an email and just express your support for either the work they're doing on these bills and or ask them to check in with the House and Ways Committee on these bills. They're still in office this week and they're taking phone calls and emails. A phone call is always more impactful, but can take a lot more time. But my ask to the board is, you often ask me how you can support us. This is literally how you do that, right? So yeah, I provided some information in my report. We talked about these bills. We don't want to rubber stamp emails. I mean, we know Senator Lewis is actually the author of the Senate bill. And we know that all 4 as representatives are very aware of who UMA is and what we're doing. We just got a letter of support for them, right? So just I think it's important. I think they need to be getting phone calls as much as possible, emails as much as possible, and saying, "Hey, we need to really kick this up the table." Senator Lewis, as Felicia mentioned, I met with him during his office hours a couple weeks ago, and we talked for 45 minutes on these bills and what we can do to support them. His biggest, he had 2 really large suggestions. One was to get the Senate President, Senate Chair, and the House Chair to both recognize that these bills are vitally important. And the way that we do that is get their constituents to give them calls and phone numbers, and or we create stories and show the vitally importance of community media. And so we've been talking, Leah and I have been talking internally. How can we kickstart that campaign to get these videos? I mean, we're video producers. Get these videos out on social media, tagging, the chairs and the presidents in those videos to show them the importance. So we're kind of working on that aspect of it. And then he mentioned that, well, that was the 2-parter, like getting the chairs and the presidents of these committees aware of this bill and getting it moving forward, or getting them moving forward into the actual House and Senate to be voted on, and also creating a media blitz online. So I'm working with Mass Access and Aaliyah here to kind of see what that looks like. So.
Hey, Tina, can you briefly just talk about what this potential funding that they're putting through looks like? I mean, my understanding is that right now we're getting cable funding, but what we're looking to get is also funding through streaming. Is that, in a
Well, so
nutshell, what it?
I could go into the long history these bills have been
Yeah.
working through for 8 years. This is the farthest they've ever gotten because there's a ton of support for them. Um, in a nutshell, it is a franchise fee. So we have a franchise fee with the cable companies for PEG operations. It would be the same exact model on streaming companies because they use the same right of ways that cable companies do for their service. And so Netflix, Hulu, whatever, would have to uh, allocate a portion of their proceeds at a state level. So whatever, let's say it's 5% maximum for cable is 5%. So whatever they make in a quarterly basis at 5%, they would have to give to the state of Massachusetts. That would go into this fund. And then the state would actually maintain the fund and disperse the income, and the income is specifically supposed to go to community media centers. So it can't go into the general fund, it can't go anywhere else. It has to come, but it has to go from the state level to the city level to the actual organization, right? Now, not everybody's on board with this with a streaming tax is what they want to call it. And so there's two bills, I think, was it two bills in the House and one in the Senate, and they're all different bills. But Mass Access, David from Mass Access says that's actually a good thing because they're understanding that we're willing to work however this works to get this support for community media. So is it a streaming tax? Is it a poll tax? Like, how does that look and what does that look like? And we're just trying to find the right language to get all of the legislators on board. So that's where it's at right now.
And just a quick suggestion, a call to your legislator. I don't think you have to have all the ins and outs of what the bills are, but you could be saying, hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm the vice president on the board of directors for media arts. I really want you to support this bill because, I've seen firsthand, having watch the kids during the workshops that they've had this summer and how impactful on that. And I'm an industry professional, and this is why I'm involved with UMA. I'm a new board member. I'm learning the ins and outs. However, like as a community member, I see how UMA has impacted, and I believe in their mission. I believe in the organization. Please support these bills. As a constituent, it's a super quick. I don't think you have to understand the nitty gritty, but obviously funding is the challenge here. And the more that we can find ways for these streaming companies are using the right of way, which is the line, free of charge. And also because it lessens the number of cable subscribers, people are always asking us to put things out on the airways for free. So our content, if it's put on YouTube, that's free. So all the work that we've done on a program, yes, it will reach more people, but it's out there for free. And we're not free. None of our staff is free and none of our time is free. The content that we're putting out there is super important sometimes. And we are, that impacts our budget, that impacts how we do business. So.
And just a point of clarification, if calling Senator Lewis's office or emailing him, it's important to note that he is the author of one of the bills, not, so he supports it, basically is what I'm saying. So my ask would be to say thank you for his support of community media. The other three can very much speak to their colleagues about the other bills, and of course Senator Lewis. The other note from Mass Access on these bills is at this point the time for advocacy is kind of over. It's all internal. But if anyone knows how bills work in the legislature, there's about 3,000 of them. I don't know how many there are. So getting eyeballs on these bills is important. Getting people talking about these bills within committee is vitally important. So that's why we're pushing the phone calls and the emails. So. Right. Okay. If there are no other questions on my update, I was also going to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the 1-year strategic plan overview.
Actually, I just want to say one thing before we jump.
Sure.
staying on UMA and about with Senator Lewis and whatnot and civic engagement. If anybody has a chance, excuse me, Senator Lewis and I did speak, and one of our very first opening discussions was actually about urban media arts and community arts in general. So if anybody hasn't had a chance to watch that, I think it's up and I think it's streaming now. So please go check that out. And also, too, big ask is I talked with Aaliyah earlier today and just trying to map out what it's going to look like for coverage around here in Malden regarding the Prop 2 override that I believe is now scheduled to be voted on in March 31st by all of us. So we were actually talking about, I think, doing weekly discussions or roundtable discussions. I'm sorry, I don't remember if we said it's going to be weekly or bi-weekly, but if anybody on this group is interested in joining in those conversations as being a resident of Malden, more than welcome to. And also, too, if anybody is willing to volunteer and help us produce this, we would also take that as well, too. So I just want to put that out there before we move on. It's in your ED report, so I wanted to talk about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're looking for the link to that, we actually shared it today on our Facebook page. So yeah. It's a great watch. That moderator, he's pretty good. So that's all
Not
I'll
that
say
he
about
likes
that.
doing that kind of stuff or
No.
anything.
Okay. We're good? Okay. So I also took an opportunity to kind of take a look at the plan that was approved last December for urban media arts and see how we were doing in hitting our goal sets. And the thing I love about a strategic plan is it really is our roadmap, right? It gives us very specific things to focus on. So basically what I did is I took all of my ED reports and our minutes and said, I'll be honest, I used AI and I said, help me really give a great overview, or not a great overview, just tell me where we're at with this plan. And AI put this out for me and I read through it and I went, okay, yeah, so if you're looking at the dashboard, I did two versions. I did a dashboard version, which is just sort of condensed to give us an overview. And then I did a deeper dive for your reading pleasure, because I know who doesn't like to read books before bed. So what I want to talk about is the dashboard. And I just want to, just overview. And I'm wondering if I should even just share my screen, maybe. So, all right, let me see if I can do that here.
I got to say, I love this, by the way, because I'm very visual, and if I can see like it listed out with green and yellow, and it really, it's a helpful piece of information, I think.
All right, let me make sure y'all can see this. Is that out on the screen? No?
Yep.
Yes?
No, it is.
It is? You can see it?
Can you make it a
Okay.
little bigger?
Can I make it bigger? Yes. Somehow. Does that work? Yes?
I'm seeing not the dashboard, but your one-year plan overview.
All right, let me move it back to where I was. Hold on. That?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
No,
can pinch your screen, and mine was blowing up for me.
All right. Everybody see that? I did zoom in on it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is kind of where we're at with our strategic plan that we approved last year. So everything is listed out in goal area, what the status is, and sort of our highlights. So looking at one of our big goals was board development, and it says we completed it. I think it's an ongoing thing, but for this year, we were able to ratify our bylaws. We activated some committees. We got new board members appointed. We had strong board engagement and civic presence at a lot of our events at UMA, and that kind of thing. Under youth engagement, we made strong progress under that goal line. We had our summer workshops. We're working with the PACE and Pathways partnership. We're developing our apprenticeship program, and we've engaged with the high school students and youth in civic engagement this year. team reorganization. We had to do the reduction in force, unfortunately, but that was part of the overall team structure, and we've implemented sort of organization-wide planners and processes to assist in keeping communication clear within the team and within the board. We've identified that, with a reduced staff comes reduced bandwidth. And so how do we, sort of spread that out so we're not burning out team members, right? And we're looking at drafting up new job descriptions for the 2026 year, as well as really identifying responsibilities, going through review processes with the employees and such like that. For under long-term strategic planning, we did initiate it. We have a draft plan in review. All of the team was incorporated into that plan draft, and looking to have the board help implement the strategic plan moving forward. Fund development, we had 7+ grants secured or submitted, and 2 5,000+ nonprofit dissolution donations, which brought our donations up to over $10,000 already this year. That's pretty significant. We've got our CRM management software underway, and the biggest thing that came out to me was that we are really diversifying our funding. Hilda mentioned earlier, how are you keeping track of all of this? That wasn't a problem 3 years ago. We were getting one source of funding, and now we've got donations and memberships and paid productions, and now we're looking at contingency funds and high interest savings accounts, and so it's a good problem to have, and I'm really proud of the work that's been done to try to continue to build on that, but also track it, as Hilda mentioned. And then community engagement. We exceeded expectations, evidently. We had major events. We had the Halloween. The election coverage was phenomenal. Neighborhood View had a little dip, and that's because we had to relaunch it. And we just did Anne just did an amazing presentation at this week's council, which I attended, and we have more engagement in that than ever. We have much more civic engagement opportunities within our community, and we're getting a lot more people through our doors. So that's really good things, right? And late last year we did sign the contract with the city for a city and school partnership. So that's a first ever. It's a 3-year contract, so we'll probably touch base with the city late summer this next year, and just to check in and see how it's going. We were named a partner with the TDI. Felicia, do you want to talk about that real briefly? We didn't talk about it during my update.
That's a major grant that the city applied for. It's basically a designation that the state offers. They applied for it previously. It was not granted, but we're one of the identified communities, and it gives the city funds for a consultant to talk through lots of different ways that the city can serve residents. It has to do with accessible sidewalks, it has to do with street lamps, it has to do with tourism, it has to do with arts and cultural organizations. So we applied as a partner. We also were identified as a potential fiscal sponsor, which would mean that if there were money that came in, the city can't actually receive the money. They would need a nonprofit to hold the money. And so we are potentially one of those organizations that could do that. And that is because we have a 501c3 status that's been maintained, and we have the appropriate filings with the Secretary of State. There's a lot of very small nonprofits in Malden, and that's a great thing, and community coalitions and things like that, but they are not necessarily, haven't been in business as long and haven't necessarily done as much due diligence as we have. So it would be a really interesting partnership. We got through the first call with the state this Monday, actually, and they'll be making decisions, I believe, in the new year about whether the project will move forward. But it's done amazing. This program has been applied in cities like Worcester and Lawrence and Lynn, and really helped them transform their downtown areas. And really, it's about reactivating. So the idea that like cultural and arts institutions aren't other than nice to have, but they're really necessary. And the city is very committed to this, and I think that we can do some really great work. So it's very encouraging.
Yeah. Thank you, Felicia. So but we're just, that brings up the thought that, we talk all the time about wanting UMA to be that community hub, right? So this is another way to do that. This is another way to ingrain ourselves within the very core of our community. So we definitely wanted to be available to be good stewards as partners in that. So that's kind of the overview of how we did. You see pretty strong green ones, and if not, what I like to see is that there's no red, so nothing didn't get done, right? Everything got work done at one point or the other, which we talked about last year. Like a lot of this is going to be done coinciding with other things. So we have some key organizational metrics. So our target revenue was $680,000, and we hit about 93% of that. And this is again from January of 2025 to date, right? So it's not fiscal year, it's this calendar year. Our membership revenue, we actually brought in over $5,000, so we're over goal on that. For our capital projects, we completed 4. We got our bathrooms, our kitchen. Some of you may not know that we had a new HVAC system installed, which is a heat pump system, so much more energy sufficient. And we've got our playback system underway, right? For our youth programs, we did 2 different types of workshops this year. We hope to continue. We plan to continue those now that we have the model going. For our grants, we targeted to write 5. We actually did 7 plus grant submissions this year. And we didn't set a target to reduce our expenses, but we did obviously reduce them by $800,000 this year. So our major
80,000.
80,000, not 800, I wish. I wish I had $800,000 to reduce. Thank you. Major achievements of the year was obviously our big remodel happened early in the year, but identifying the technical issues and the equipment issues that we need to address is really a huge priority as well. So I'm glad that is done. We have actually grown our programs here at UMA. We got the Neighborhood View relaunched. We did the youth filmmaking showcase. We're partnered with MAPC on that huge project, which we got good funds for. We built up our community trust and visibility with multiple events and coverage aspects. Social media, we're being much more active on social media. And a huge priority, which I'm really proud of all the work that this board has done, is the bylaws, getting new members and getting our committees going. I think is vital to the success of our organization. So well done on that. Things that we need to really kind of pay attention to in the upcoming years. Obviously we've talked about it a lot, our aging technical infrastructure and the need for capital improvements. The fact that we do have a significant shortage of staffing and what can we realistically do and not overpromise. The fact that our cable revenue is declining at a very rapid rate, concerning rate, honestly. The good thing is that we did reduce our operating budget needs significantly, but how long is that going to sustain us, right? Without a concrete plan. And then, not having the ability to utilize our facility space to its potential really is a hindrance. And so that's why the focus was to submit for those two larger grants this year so that we can try to get that project moving along and really be able to use our space to its full potential. So, top priorities for 2026 would be to finalize and approve the 3-year strategic plan, launch our apprenticeship intern program, begin phase 1 of control room and facility redesign. I don't know. We'll see about that. Activate board-led capital campaign strategy, expand neighborhood view and civic explainer content, and continue to always grow our partnership with the Malden Public Schools and our city programs. So this is kind of what AI said, as far as so evidently UMA is more stable, more trusted, and more strategically focused than at the start of the year. Yay us. Community engagement is at its strongest, governance is modernized, funding is diversifying, capital upgrades are underway, staff capacity and technical modernization remain our next big steps. But UMA enters year 2 with clarity, momentum, and a united board staff vision. So, I'm going to stop sharing. I think, how do I stop share? There we go. And I'll turn it over to all of you to go, what a bunch of baloney. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I didn't, yeah.
I think my feet, oops, of course. Sorry, sorry, you guys can hear my dog in the background. My feedback, I like that. I think going back to what Jonathan was saying, right? I think that seeing this visually, I think actually is very helpful to see that we actually have made a lot of progress, right? Sometimes you could feel like, what the hell? What are we doing? Is any of this actually working? So this is actually kind of nice. And I think you had said that too, Tina. It's actually nice to not see anything in the red. So
Yeah.
I know we still have a lot of work, but I would say that this was very visually helping to see and not feel like was the 1 year plan worth it, or what did we even execute in this 1 year? So that would be my feedback on just hearing everything. I mean, and of course, hearing the cable funding too is like that's also alarming. But I, as always, have great faith and confidence that we will make sure that we are, weaning ourselves off being dependent on one source of income and moving into something where we have multiple streams at this point. But yeah, overall, impressive.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. I also thought it was good. It was nice to see it in a visual format. I don't agree with everything though. I mean, I would be harder on myself as like a board member. Like we are there's been turnover and that happens, and like I feel like it's kind of more in the yellow. I don't know where it was, if it was in the green, and same with like the youth programs like that. If it continues, yes, but and I know it's just a 1 year, so it's reasonable, but I don't know. Part of it's me too. Like I need to work harder now. I'm on finance, and I know that's somewhere here on the agenda, and I'm like, eh. So, but it's things I want to work on, right? Because then I go back to like the finance subcommittee, and it's like, well, Brian's not here, and I'm on it, and Tina's on it, and then it's like we need to kind of update that, which is also on our agenda. So there's, I don't know. I still think there are things that need to work on, and I don't know. If it's in the green, that's great, but I don't know that I necessarily always feel that way. So thanks.
I would follow up on that and just say, the one I just went through was the like sort of the 10,000 foot level thing that if you haven't had a chance to read the full report, there's a lot of specifics in that, kind of were accomplished. And I should clarify that I asked AI to say, all right, what did we actually accomplish? So maybe it might be skewed a little bit that way. But I also think I love that you're pointing that out, Ian, because I think it's really important to understand, all right, what didn't get accomplished and how can we strengthen that and roll it into the next year, right? So we purposely kept everything fluid in this initial plan because we didn't know how it was going to go, and that way it rolls into the next plan, right? So then we strengthen those strategies. So yeah.
Well, I'm very hopeful for the foundation that you guys have been continuing to lay out. I think that was definitely very refreshing to see the improvements for sure, and I know that it's very scary. I think that that's why I came in with like, how are you guys keeping track of this? Because it was a big dip with the cable stuff, so I'm glad you guys are keeping everything afloat, and I'm very, very hopeful for the new year because when we meet each other again, it will be 2026. So
Oof.
very, very hopeful and positive for things to come. So I think you guys definitely have the handle on this, You guys know what direction we need to go in, so I will continue to help and support the best I can. And I'm sure everyone here on the board feels the same way. We want to make sure that everything here is successful.
Thank you, Hilda. Jenny, did you have anything before we move on? You don't have to. I know your voice hurts too. Throat hurts.
Hold on. No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
It's also helpful to be reminded that as board members, we give you a lot of information, and we want to try to hit like the high notes and the low notes. And I appreciate everybody saying like thank you or support or oh, we'd like to grow this, because that means that I can see that you're engaged in with what we're saying. So we appreciate hearing that feedback. I find it a privilege because I get to come to the board meeting and hear that. But when we all get together with the rest of the staff, they like hearing that too. And everybody who's at UMA are rock stars, and they're doing double duty, and a lot of they're working very hard. And I couldn't do what James does, and I can't do what Aaliyah does, and they could try to do what I do, but I don't know if they would like it very much. But so it will be a wonderful opportunity to have us all together when we can discuss our plans and really solidify this stuff. So
Yeah, I was just going to say I appreciate all the information. It's a lot. It's a lot to consume and understand, and I'm still trying to navigate it with all the information you're giving me. But you're giving it to us, and it's making sense, as personally as I attend more and more meetings. So yeah, I totally appreciate all that stuff, and it's really, really helpful to get at least some sort of grasp on how everything's going. So I definitely appreciate it, and I know you guys work your asses off. Everybody on the staff, especially now being shorthanded. So pass that on from all of us. I'm sure that you do an amazing job.
Thank you. And you can pass it on next month because everybody will be here. It says staff UMA's team has been asked to attend the work session next month. So we're all a team, right? We're all UMA, and we're all gonna work together to move forward with things. So but I do appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and just another thing is to see everything moving forward is the most important thing, and I see that. I see it in how the facilities that you've had to, what you've had to do there, that took away from stuff that we all wanted to do, and now it's a progress. I see progress, and that is ultimately the most important thing. So.
I agree. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, if there's nothing else on the strategic plan update, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Board President.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for all of the basically what feels like an end of the year report at this point too. So, all right. All right, we'll go right to the finance report. We can roll right into that, and I will turn this over to Eden if she has anything to report on.
Yeah, I think I need to know. I mean, obviously, I didn't supply anything, and that's on me, and I apologize. Like, what kind of report should I be sending monthly to the team? And maybe I need to take this offline so that, and it needs to come ahead of the meeting, not right now. I mean, obviously, I am logged in to, or it's not obvious, but I swear I'm logged into QuickBooks. I could share my screen if that was desired, but I don't know if there's information or it's too late because it's like as of the meeting rather than prior to. But I do have like statement of cash flows, but I don't know how like useful that is. Like, do we really want to get into that, or what kind of details do we want? Because I feel like some of the other, I don't know, overviews are more helpful, like having an update from Felicia on, grants is like way more, I don't know, enthusiastic and less boring than what I can provide on, statement of cash flows is what I have on my screen to the left, which you can't see. But I think I want some feedback on how to move forward as this position, because I guess I am probably struggling a little bit. Not that I don't know what I'm doing, but just what's the best use of everyone's time and like what do I put forward? I can reconcile with the best of them, but like what do you want to hear about? Tina and I had a short conversation a few weeks ago and I did provide my Verizon bill and I pay $7.77. So when we're asking people who aren't paying a Verizon or Comcast bill, maybe asking for that for, when they hit click on a YouTube video, would that be reasonable and conversations like that? I get that that's not the finance report and you might want like the balance sheet. Uh, Maybe we could take this offline at some other point with like the president, Tina, and myself, but if anyone has any comments,
I guess
all ears.
basically, I guess basically want to know we're not closing the doors this month, right? I mean, at this
Not this
point,
month,
okay,
no. I
good.
mean, I mean, it is like I could, and I think that's the thing too. Like you can paint a scary picture, like, oh, numbers are going down in terms of like people who have cable, and like if it keeps at a certain pace, like what does that mean for UMA? And we do need to look at it that way too. But I think you also need to be positive because I don't know, being negative all the time isn't going to get you anywhere either. So, like encouraging people to donate $7.77 and it's a lucky number, so why not? And yeah. Yeah.
I
And
love that,
my
by the way.
husband's having guys' night, so you might hear the doorbell in the background and like I didn't know this was going to be remote and so it's pool night downstairs.
I would say that, I think it's important to provide a snapshot of where we are financially. What that looks like, I think could be a conversation at the work session, right? That's again more of that board governance and processes. I think it's important for the transparency of our meetings to provide some sort of snapshot from our treasurer. But we could go into more details in that at the work session and really kind of define what that looks like. Um, so no, our doors aren't closing tomorrow. I mean, well, technically they're closing on New Year or Christmas Eve, but that's because of holiday break, not because of
Yeah,
finance.
that's because it's the
Right.
holidays. Yeah, we're not closing
Um,
due to financial
yeah.
reasons.
And I think it's important to keep me accountable in finances too. So saying, yep, everything's been reconciled, everything's good, then no big red flags, that kind of thing. Making sure that I'm staying on budget, or if I'm not, why is this budget number so off? And having a conversation about that with the board, I think it's important. I value transparency, I value accountability. And so when you're thinking about a finance update from UMA's standpoint, it's really you as a collective group. What do you want to know on a monthly and annual basis, right?
Yeah, and I think that I know Eden had said that kind of jokingly around, but the gloom and doom, right? I mean, I don't think that we want to necessarily hear that every meeting. We had probably listened to that for a few years straight of the doom and gloom, and I know it's there, but also too, I think also just understand. And I think we're also to kind of just echo what Tina was just saying just now, right? Holding accountable the ED, just saying, hey, what's the discrepancy here? Why is this much money being spent? How come this is not coming in? Or what can we do better to improve here or whatever. So I mean, yeah, I think that's something we can work out. I think maybe the January work session too. Now that we have a new finance person or treasurer or however you want to say, I think that this would be the time to kind of revamp what those finance reports look like, as opposed to, like I said, what we've been hearing for the last couple of years of just news, right? So I think that maybe that's something we should be prepared to think about. What do we want our finance reports to look like moving forward under a new finance person? So and were there things that were missing, right? I mean, I think that we could probably go back and pull up some of the old finance reports and be like, oh, I kind of wish that this was included here versus this, right? So so I think that's something to think about, and for myself too. And I'd be happy, Eden, to talk to you about it with Tina and everybody. I'm not a finance guy, clearly. That's why I went to law school. So I couldn't even make 2 + 2 = 5, even if no matter how hard I tried. So, but yeah, if you want support, need support, I'd be happy. Obviously, myself, Tina, and I should also include Jonathan too as a VP. So happy to have more of this discussion offline. And so for the next meeting and for January's work session, can figure it out. And like I said, what's it going to look like from for the upcoming years.
Right.
Yeah, I would totally agree. January, let's hash it out and figure out what we want to see every month.
Okay.
And and I don't think it needs to be in depth. It just needs to tell us where we're at. What do we have in the bank? What's coming in? What needs to go out? Are there major capital things that are going out or coming in? And but we can definitely discuss that in January. I agree.
Okay.
I think the statement by the treasurers is important. Like, I've reviewed the books. I've, if you're what level the detail you provide, you work that out. But at least for your due diligence as board oversight, you're saying, as treasurer, I've done XYZ,
That's true.
and that's kept us transparency and accountable and
Okay.
that kind of thing. So
Yeah, we want to make sure that Tina is not paying for her trips back home to Minnesota out of the capital expenditure
Right.
or any
Listen, if
operating.
I'm going to be paying for trips, it's not going to be back to Minnesota. Let me tell you what.
Well, that's so we don't get thrown off. That's so that throws our scent off. Yeah. And then
Right?
all of a sudden we find out that she's like, taking like first class and swiping
Yeah.
the Uber card.
We'll have to start calling her Cash Patel then.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right.
I would say
and-
too, like, putting things behind a paywall is something that's completely in discussion. So it has been not planned or implemented, but other community access stations do that for, and it's not a huge cash income, but it's
More than we were receiving.
yes.
Right. Just like our memberships, I pointed out that our memberships, we pulled in nearly $6,000 this year in membership fees. When I got here, we were pulling in zero, right? So that stuff starts to add up after a while. So
Yeah. All right. Any further discussion before we move on to the next item? Seeing that there is none, we're going to move on to the subcommittee update. So I emailed everybody, or I emailed to the BOD, but I know Lori had sent out, had attached the subcommittee, last year's subcommittees. And so I don't know if anybody had a chance to look it over, what she had sent out. And if so, are there any committees that people would prefer to be on? Or if you're not prepared to discuss it tonight, do you want me to go ahead and assign people committees, and then from there, during the next meeting, we can talk about it? I mean, how do you guys want to handle that? How would you guys like to handle that? Outside, I mean, outside of
Dealer's choice.
dealer's choice.
Emmanuel, where did you send those? I don't think I got that email, so I wasn't able to.
Okay, you didn't then. Oh, let me see. I sent it to the BOD, but I know I saw Lori take my email and forward it to actually everybody's personal
Yeah,
email
she
address.
did. She did. And I can't find it though, but she definitely did because I did see it at one point.
I mean, if you guys want, I can quickly share my screen
There
and
it
just
is.
update it if you guys want. Or like I said, or what I can do is,
But aren't
Jonathan.
these old people? I mean, Lizette's not on the board anymore,
Yeah,
right? These are
yeah. These are,
previous. Okay.
but just yeah, these are just the
Okay.
previous committees that we had. It's up to you guys. I mean, I have no. I mean, I'd rather. I mean, I guess I want to defer to you guys. But again, if you guys want to tell me where you guys want to go, I have no problem. Or I can team up with Jonathan and we can figure it out. And then I can just email out the list to everybody. And if you like your assignment, let me know and you're good with it. Or if you hate it, I can change it.
So I just want to put out there, I'm on nominating, and if there's any way, like any of the newer board members might want to like take that over in any form, that would probably be helpful because I'm also on finance, and obviously I would rather put my efforts there. Um, so not
And
that I
executive
couldn't do
team now.
both, but I would appreciate it, and I just thought I'd like if you're reviewing it and kind of like I don't, I'm open or I'm just advocating or asking if
Okay.
that's something you're interested in, that would be helpful.
I don't have a preference, Emmanuel. If you want to throw me in there, I'll take it. Whatever helps Eden out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
no problem.
With that being said, Jenny, do you have any opinions where you want to go?
No, that's fine. I agree. Just let me know and I'll tell you if I don't like it.
I mean,
So-
what was
so-
Brian on? I think would be the other thing I would look at if he was on.
He was on finance. I
And that
believe.
was
I
it.
believe he was just. He was the chair of finance, and I don't think he was any other committees at that point.
Right.
But so, Jonathan, I will reach out to you tonight, and we can figure out sometime in the next couple days before Christmas, so we can have this published before the next board meeting.
No problem.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Let's move on to the next agenda item then. All right. So the next agenda item is old business, and I'm going to jump into the accounting policies update. You guys should have all received that too yesterday. That would have been part of that email, I believe. Right? Yes.
It's been sent out multiple times, that and the procurement procedures have been emailed to the board. They should also be on the planner. So
Correct. So I'm hoping that people have had an opportunity to read both, and that if there is any update, I'm more or less what I'm trying to get at tonight is that I'd be looking to take a vote to implement the procurement procedure policy that we've talked about, and also the accounting policy as well too. And I'd be looking to take votes on them tonight so that we can have them in effect. I don't know if I saw Tina. I don't know if you raised your
yeah,
hand.
just a point of clarification. The accounting policies is just an update. With outgoing staff, we had to update this policy. So none of the policies have changed. It's just who's responsible for what has been updated within that. So for our accounting policies, it was a recommendation from our auditor this summer to have that done and brought before the board to ratify. Procurement policy procedure is a new document to the organization. There is not one currently in effect. And I would encourage the board to have if you're fine with it, that's fine. But it's just something I drafted as a potential. I think it's really important to have a document like this for for a nonprofit organization so that I'm not running around spending $50,000 to $90,000 without you all knowing about it, right? But do you need to have a conversation about the minimums, maximums? Do you want more say in this? Do you want to just approve it? That's what I was looking for tonight on the procurement policy.
And this procurement policy is pretty much the same thing that we talked about last month, right? That we saw last month.
So I presented, I think in August, didn't I?
In August, okay.
August or October's meeting. I didn't do it at the annual meeting, but
Okay.
so
I
one
think
of
it was
the
August.
was it August? That makes sense because that's about when the auditor was here. So again, it's just another transparency, accountability process within our organization that really it's really vital that we have some sort of documentation and policy regarding that. Now, do I want to have to come to the board every time I need to spend $5,000? Not really. But should the minimum be $100,000 for, so I think that's the question before the board. And this document was to start that conversation back in August, so.
This is the type of thing possibly grant funding organizations would look at too. Do
Right.
you have the proper procedures in place? Would we have to bid things out for RFP? Yes, we would. How much, what's the cap that you're giving the executive director in terms of what they could spend without board approval? Those types of things, again, transparency, but potentially could impact grant funding, or funders, or sponsors, or underwriters.
I mean, I think we talked about this being a living document as well, that could be changed as needed. So I would make a motion to just approve this, just so we have something on the books, and it looks good to me. The only thing I would say is, and you do this in your ED reports, is just inform us, when you make any purchases above $10,000, I guess, or something like that. Just keep us informed, but you do that in your ED report. So.
Yeah, I agree that that Tina has been pretty transparent when it comes to any big expenditures, or any expenditures period, basically around the in the organization. I mean, I'm fine with it too. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not here to influence anybody one way or another. Obviously, having read this and agreeing that there should be some type of uh, policy when it comes to any major expenditures, especially anything 10,000 and higher, or whatever, any big purchases like that. Yeah, I think that there always should be some type of oversight, and we should know. Um, I mean, luckily, this organization has not had an executive director that has gone rogue and that has just spent a ton of money like that without board approval or without notifying the board. But I think it is good for us to have something. And seeing what Felicia just said too about having, when going for grants or anything like that, and other organizations are looking at this. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that, to get our stuff in order, so that we can point to, we also have this as well too, that we have governance documents on how we run our organization, from bylaws all the way through any big purchases.
And I agree, and I'll just add, I mean, it's important too, but the idea that we've also discussed it in the past, like I know it was before November meeting because I wasn't there for November meeting, and we have definitely like discussed it before. So I think like there's only so many times you can hold things off as well. Like as a board, I feel like we have a responsibility to kind of move it forward, and so I'm supportive as well.
Yeah, and something I also want to add in too. I mean, I also think that at the conclusion of whether it be 6 months or a few months, or if we want to go and change something because something doesn't work, I mean, we as the board obviously do reserve that right, with whether it be the bylaws, whether it be the procurement policy, whether it be whatever governance that we do, basically, right? We always do reserve. I mean, that's policy work in general. That it's not always going to be 100% ironclad or concrete. I mean, there's always going to be something that we're not going to account for that's going to show up, and that we have to move to basically address that. So, but yeah, I mean, I would rather have something now than what was it, like, let perfect be the enemy of good, right? If we try to add in too much or try to forecast what's going to happen, I think that we'll just be, we just won't get something approved. And so I'm fine with it the way it is. So yeah, those are my final thoughts.
I support it. I find it's a safeguard rail for what you guys have put in place. I'm familiar with the procurement documents and other companies, so I think that this is the safest way to go moving forward.
All right. So I believe that on Jonathan was the one who motioned, right? On Jonathan's motion to adopt the procurement policy as is. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Eden. I think we can do a roll call on this one, Felicia. I think we should roll call this vote.
Can I just make a point? They're technically, you're doing a motion on item B in old business and item A hasn't been addressed. I don't know if that need.
Sorry. So, all right. So, you know what? We'll start with item A then first. Thank you for that. For some
Yep.
reason, I was thinking that we rolled right into that had been adopted. Okay. So so that we're not taking it out of order. So, Jonathan, do you want to amend your motion to motion for the adoption of the accounting policies update?
I would motion to accept that. Yes.
As is the accounting policy as is.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to Jonathan's motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Eden. I think we should also do a roll call vote on this one. So clerk will call the roll.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Hilda,
Aye.
Eden,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Yes. All right. So that motion carries. So UMA now has an accounting policies update. So that is now. Does that have to go out to the full? Does that have to go out to the full membership?
No, the only current thing that needs to go out to the membership is the bylaws.
Bylaws. Okay. All right.
So just clarifying, so there was an initial motion by Jonathan about the procurement policy, and you asked if he wanted to amend his motion, and his amendment was about the accounting policy. So there's still the business of the procurement policy
Right.
before
Yes.
the board.
Yeah.
Just
And I
just
will
outlining
motion,
things, right?
and
Yes.
I will do the next motion to accept the procurement.
All right, on Jonathan. Well, gee, let me first before we move into it, I must say
Okay.
that the ED has a quick trigger finger and would not let me get out the words fast enough to move on to the next agenda item. So,
What'd I say about transparency? Keeping us accountable.
yeah. So, all right. So now we're moving. All right. So, the accounting. So now we're on the procurement procedures. There's a motion on the floor made by Jonathan. Is there a second?
I'll second again.
Seconded by Eden. All right. We're also going to do a roll call vote with this. And so clerk will call the roll.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Hilda,
Aye.
Eden,
Going with yes.
Jonathan,
I'll go with yes.
Emmanuel.
And I will also vote yes. Either I or yes will work on this one. All right. So that motion carries. So the procurement procedures has now been updated. So the next time we see it, we will see the watermark of draft taken off of it. Same thing with the UMAR accounting policies update as well too. Those will not be in the draft form. Those will be as is. Thank you guys for your work on that. All right. So now we will move on to the 3-year strategic plan. I will open up the floor for discussion. I don't know if Tina wants to add anything further. I know we talked about this during last month's meeting, but I don't know if there's any further discussion that needs to occur. So I will open the floor up for any further discussion. If not, and if there are no amendments to it, I should also add, I would also be looking to take a vote to adopt the 3-year strategic plan, obviously going into the new year.
Yeah, and I know, Eden, you weren't here for that meeting, but it was really good when Tina took us through it and it all made sense. I don't know if you guys had talked, that's all.
No,
No,
unfortunately,
it's-
we haven't had an opportunity to connect on the strategic plan, but the video is out there.
Right.
I made sure to try to get it out in front of you again, right after the meeting so that you had plenty of time to try to digest and look through the plan. I didn't hear from any board members since that date. So if there were revisions or thoughts that you had, now's the time to kind of talk about it. Yeah.
I still like it.
I liked it too. No revisions at all. It's just, again, just making sure that the grants and everything kind of flow in the way that they need to. Everything kind of sticks according to plan. And if we need to make any changes, we make it with appropriate timing, I guess, is the only takeaway that I have. But it's really good. It's really well put together.
And that was my feedback as well, like wanting the opportunity to adjust my fundraising plan based on the strategic plan, the two things linking together, and that we have the ability to do review along the way, iterate if we need to, change things as we need to. And it's a roadmap. And Tina kept just saying, like, I don't, like, because I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get all this done? How am I going to fund all this? And it was really like, this is our roadmap. This is, yes, of course, we will have feedback loops. Of course, we will be asking the board for their feedback and talking to each other about this and reviewing it regularly and making sure that our goals are working. And if they're not, and we're not able to meet them, why? And then maybe they need to go and be rearranged in some way. So thank you.
And my feedback, going back to again from tonight's earlier, the visualization, right? I think that when we do go back into those discussions of reviews of where we are, that I just ask, please, if we could have some really like the visuals of where we are, like in progress, has been completed, just so that I know with 3-year plans and doing reviews again, sometimes you may feel like it's not, nothing is being accomplished in some respect, but I think it was helpful to see that. So that would be my only ask, is just when we do go back to look to see what's going on, if we could just, I don't know, just have a visual of where we are, like what is actually being accomplished, so that in that way, if there's anything that, if and when the board needs to jump in and help out wherever they can, that we know that, okay, that, something's in the red, how do we help out? How do we get involved to help? So that when we go back to look at this again, it goes from red to yellow and eventually the green to be completed. So that would be my ask.
Yeah, I totally agree. The dashboard is very helpful. It just simplifies everything. It shows us where we stand on all. It targets everything and just shows it all really simply. And I think that it takes away the fat and gets right to the point. And for me, I like that.
Yeah.
I would say, in every one of my reports, I always did a strategic plan update. Our first year update was our first year plan, to me, felt like a beta program on how we're going to do this moving forward. And so I learned from it. And now, if you look at the proposal I gave, the plan I gave to the board, there's quarterly check-ins, there's, metrics, there's, so we can talk about what that looks like on a monthly basis to help keep the board informed of our progress too. So. Mhm.
Okay. If there is no other further discussions or comments or any edits, I will entertain any motions right now to adopt a 3-year strategic plan. And I can't make any motions from the chair.
I'll motion to accept the 3-year
All right.
plan.
Jonathan's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Hilda. Clerk will call the roll. We're going to take a voice vote. We'll take a roll call on the 3-year strategic plan.
Eden,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Hilda,
Yes.
Emmanuel.
Aye. No, I was kidding. Yes. All right. The 3-year strategic plan is now in full effect. Again, thank you to Tina for your hard work and coming up with this. Thank you to Felicia, obviously, too, as well. And thank you to the board as well, too. So we look forward to this. And again, this has given me great excitement about what the future at this organization looks like. And, I can't wait. So, and I know that from what I can see so far, I'm trying to think the right, how to phrase it without making it sound like nothing's been accomplished. But I know that stuff will get done, and seeing what's been done up to this point, the work is only going to continue to grow. And so thank you to everybody, and let's let's get prepared and ready to hit the ground running in 2026. Let's put it to you this way. So, and I know we will. This is a good group. I can already feel it. All right. So we're going to move on to the 3-year. For some whatever reasons, I can't 3-year off and capital budget discussion. I will turn this back over now to Tina or I should say, I won't turn this back over. I'll actually open this up to the floor for any further discussion. Yeah,
You can start with me. How's that?
Yeah, that's
So
probably the
just-
better way to phrase that. Thank you.
Yeah. So just in the interest of time, Emmanuel and I talked about what the agenda would look like tonight, and I realized this was on our agenda from last month, and under new business, and it should stay on our agenda now until we've completed it, right? So now that the 3-year strategic plan has been approved, I can now create a 3-year operating plan as well as as I continue to gather numbers, a multi-year capital plan. So my intention is in this next budget season, which I usually present sometime around March, April for approval before end of fiscal year. My plan is to have a full on 3-year budget for you to approve that we would then cycle on every budget season. So we're not just budgeting and approving a budget for this next year like we have been. We're approving for the future, right? And those numbers might change, but those will be discussed on the annual approval basis, right? So I think it helps continue to align our strategic plan with our funding, with our resources, all of that kind of thing. So I don't have anything to present tonight. I just wanted to advise that it's going to be kept on the agenda, and I can give you progress reports up to budget approval time.
Sounds good to me. I mean, I think it's important to now that we have the strategic plan, let's have the details of operating. So operating budget as well. So yeah, definitely.
And I can say from past experiences in different organizations, I don't ever recall any organizations ever doing a strategic plan and an operating and budget, plan that runs concurrently with that. So I'm also pretty excited to see what that's going to look like. And, and I think that'll ground us in reality too, right? And again, I think that it's either going to tell us, hey, we're on the right track, or we're going to have to do a quick change and think of something else strategically. But I like that idea. And again, I can't wait to see this put into action as well. So this is going to be very interesting to see. Interesting in a good way, obviously, is what I mean. All right. Any other further comments or questions, discussions, editorializing? None. Seeing none. So the next agenda item is the January board work session. Obviously, we brought it up last month. We brought it up tonight. I don't know if there's any further comments on it, but just be prepared to. I guess the easiest way I can say it is that what I'd be looking for, and I think what the expectation is from I think everybody on this call would be fleshing out what 2026 is going to look like for UMA, what our roles are going to be, what the state, what the organization's role is going to be, how we fit in as the board, how we all can work together, and again, I think what's it going to look like for us, right? What's it going to look like from all different aspects, and so just be prepared to discuss and have that vision and what's it look like. And I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to add anything further.
Well, I just don't. I mean, we talked about the finance aspect and trying to organize how we want to see that every month. But will we have an agenda as far as how we want to go through things? Because I think if we have some sort of guideline, I think that'll help because we can go all over the place.
Yeah, sorry.
Can I jump in here quick?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have an agenda. We're actually going to have an implementation guide to walk through during the work session. So this is the same exact thing I'm doing with the team on Monday. I'm creating a literal step-by-step. Who is doing this? How is this getting implemented? What are we doing? And it's going to be based on the strategic plan and upcoming projects or campaigns we've got going on. So that will be provided to the board prior to the meeting, so you have time to look sort of through it and maybe add your 2 cents. But it will be based off the strategic plan. So, and again, a reminder, the entire UMA team will be at that work session. So plan at minimum 2 hours of time.
Do you have a
Do we
date
have
and
a,
time?
do we have, yeah, date, that's what.
Yeah, it's it's the same date we always, third
Have
week.
our meeting.
I will say, I don't know if we're going to be able to hold it here at in the studio. We might have to reserve a room at the council chambers. We currently have a production in the studio that night. And or we could utilize our new control room or conference room area to do the work, but it might get a little crowded in there with the staff and everybody else. So yeah.
So do you want or have the expectation that people are going to discuss ideas, or it really is a review of the plan and feedback of the plan?
No, it is okay. We now have a plan. We now have expectations. Within this plan, when are we going to hit these goal sets within the plan? Who's responsible for making sure we're getting these goal sets done? Have a conversation, perhaps creatively, how we can do more within the goal sets. Yes. But one thing that I don't think we've done since I've gotten here is really come together as a team and started to plan early on how we're going to make a plan happen, right? And now we have it. Everyone's on board with the same plan. So let's run right out the gate and say, okay, who's taking what on? How are we doing that? And do it as a collective, not individually in our own heads. So the other part of that is you should absolutely come to the table with an idea of how you're going to plug into this plan, right? What you want to do, how you want to be actively involved, how you think you can engage. Because this is the plan that we've all agreed that we're following. We're not changing it right now. We're gonna move forward. So how can we get it going immediately in January of 2026? That's the intention of the work session.
Sorry, can you repeat the date? Sorry. Is it the
Um,
15th? I just don't know if we're counting the first as I mean, technically it's the first Thursday.
Technically, the first is the first Thursday. So it is, let me look. I got it on my calendar. Um, yeah, the 15th
Okay.
is what I have on my calendar.
Okay.
And also, something that Tina and I talked about yesterday, and I'm going to put this out to the full group because we're not in executive session, and there would be no purpose to be going into an executive session. We obviously have to record this in some capacity. There has to be some notes on this, so I don't know if everybody's comfortable with having this recorded by Zoom, or if well, you said we're not going to be in the studio, so I would think that it's going to be recorded through Zoom at this point, right?
Yeah, well, I don't have an answer whether or not it's going to be in the studio yet.
Okay. If it is in the studio, I mean, do we want this to be live streamed? Do we want this to be filmed? Excuse me. Do we want this to be taped through Zoom and then published later? I mean, how does the board? Does anybody have a preference on it?
I'll go wherever you guys need me to go.
I mean, we're not discussing any secrets like that could be harmful to the organization. So, right? I mean, I don't
We're
have a
not
preference.
taking any votes at the meeting either, right? You're
Yeah,
not taking any votes. It's a discussion. I mean, if people want to tune in to us brainstorming and handing out responsibilities, that's to this board's discretion.
yeah.
But we can, I'm certainly happy to record it for, people to view at their leisure too. So
Yeah.
I will say that if you're wanting to record it in the studio, if it's available, because Aaliyah wants to be a part of the conversation, we're gonna have to figure out who could do that because it couldn't be a UMA team member, right? So
I guess
But I do
David,
know that. I'm sorry.
go ahead. I was gonna ask if we could move up the time then, if it's gonna be a longer session. Should we start earlier if possible? I know I can, but that's easy for me to say because now I've looked at the calendar and recognizing that I could be there earlier, but I don't know if that means everyone else can. So, but if it is going to be a longer session, I want to respect going to bed, right? And all of that.
So technically, this wouldn't be a board meeting. Is that correct? So if we say, to Eden's point, we start at 6 and people can't make, like Adam can't make it until 6:30 or 7, that's all right, right? We don't need a quorum or anything like that for this workshop. Is that
No,
correct?
you don't, because we're not taking any formal votes. But
Right.
but I mean, even for myself, right? Depending on where I am job wise, I anticipate that I'll be back to working for somebody at this point in January, right? So, you know, I don't mind if people want to meet early. It's just if it becomes too disruptive, if people come in at 6:30 or 7 o'clock,
Yeah,
and and then all of a sudden somebody's like asking a question of, oh, what about this? And it's like,
right.
we already discussed this.
Yeah,
This came up
yeah, yeah.
early in the discussion. So
I would
I
just say
mean,
leave the time as is and poll the group and see if earlier time is feasible.
yeah, I
Just
mean
in
that's
the,
fine.
Yeah.
just to keep
Yeah,
things
that's fine.
going.
Yeah, that's fine. I got no problem with that then. Okay. But I did want to put that out there though, that if we are meeting, not that I think that anybody would file an open meeting law violation on us, but we technically are a board of transparency, right? And that we would have sufficient members of quorum to conduct business. So just putting it out there for you guys just to be aware of. So that's all. Okay. All right. If there's no other further discussion on that, we'll jump down to new business. And that is the vote for the primary administrator or admin.
As you remember, I emailed the board president and the clerk requesting that this be placed on the agenda. I need an official vote from the board to be listed as the primary administrator of our QuickBooks Online account, and it has to be done within a quorumed vote. I did send language to the board president, what that would look like. Find it
I
for
don't think
you.
I put that out. Let me see. When did you send that to me, Tina? Do you remember?
Earlier this week or late last week.
Oh, I know what it was. Yes. You know what? When do you need the decision by?
As soon as possible, because right now somebody that doesn't work here is listed as the primary. So I found it. Do you want me to?
I have it too. So let me ask everybody on this call right now if I could. What I could do is to give everybody a chance to read. We could come back online. We could
Could I
do it
put it in
virtually.
could I put it in the chat?
Yeah, you can do that. I don't know if everybody wants to read it. I don't know if anybody wants to mill it over. If they want to take a few quick minutes to read it.
Well, let me put it in the chat regardless here, and then you can.
I would rather look at it
Just
now.
vote on it. All right.
Yeah.
I apologize, folks. I was supposed to
I
send that out.
just think with the holidays, like trying to
Yeah.
meet again or making a decision doesn't
There we go. I put it in the chat, the request, but currently somebody that is no longer on the UMA staff is listed as the primary admin, and in order for me to be listed as the primary admin on our account, they need an official board meeting minutes that the board approves of having me listed as the primary. So
Well,
that
and
is
with
the yeah.
Do you
and with the
want,
language. Sorry.
I was going to say, as clerk, do you want me to read the language for you? Is that helpful?
If you want to read it if you want to officially read it into the minutes, sure.
Okay. So the motion before the board right now is motion to authorize Executive Director Tina Lagarde to serve as primary administrator of Urban Media Arts QuickBooks Online account effective immediately. The Board of Director affirms that this designation reflects UMA's current operational needs and grants the Executive Director full authority to manage the account settings, user access, and administrative functions as required by Intuit QuickBooks.
Thank you, Felicia. All right. With that, I mean that language is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I don't know. So what I can do is I'll open up the floor to discussion right now, and if there is no discussion, I will entertain any motions to adopt the language as is.
I assume, Tina, that the person that was on this is the former executive director or
One of
someone
our former
similar?
staff members, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that the executive director should have access to this stuff. So my motion is to accept as is.
I guess
All right. So on John,
Wait,
can I just ask, like, I mean, so for the past, since you've been board, like the ED, you haven't been the primary, but a staff member has been, but that staff member's no longer with us, correct?
yes, yes.
But you still have access because I can see it, right? You still can look at it, but it's just this person still has access that should not.
No, that's not right.
Okay.
So right now, this person is listed as the holder of the
Okay.
account. And it absolutely has to be transferred over to somebody within the organization.
Okay.
So that's what the ask is. That's why we're going through this formal policy or process, because that person is no longer with the organization, yet could take my access away, take your access away, because they are the primary account holder is basically how they're
Okay.
looking at it. Yes.
So once you are designated the primary account holder, that other person gets taken off of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I still motion to accept
Okay.
as is.
And I'll second. Sorry, I just wanted to
No,
just
that's
So-
clarify.
that's no, that's fine. All right. So on Jonathan's motion, seconded by Eden, clerk will call the roll on this one.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Emmanuel.
President should always go last.
Oh, sorry. Jonathan,
yes.
Eden,
Yes.
Hilda,
Yes.
Emmanuel.
Yes. Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
quickly for moving fast on that one. And I do apologize to the board. Now that you say it, Tina, I'm like, oh yeah, there was an email that she sent, but I was getting ready for an interview and then I was getting ready to get the hell out of town right after that. So there you go. So I apologize for dropping the ball, folks. All right. We are now at the end of our meeting. So I will entertain any motions right now at this current moment to
Is there any other, did we ask if there was any other new business? We didn't.
there's nothing else. There was nothing else on the new business.
Okay.
So
Just asking.
yeah. There was nothing else. And nothing else on the agenda. All right. So with that being said, I'll entertain any motions currently right now to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
All right. On Eden's motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jonathan. Simple voice vote works. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right. The ayes have it. There's no no's and there's no abstentions. Thank you, everybody. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a great holiday season. Thank you guys all for your hard
Thanks,
work.
everybody.